Coming up on the show, a recent death of a young child tied to a handgun is renewing Georgia's laws concerning the responsibility of firearms. Also, a proposed plastics plant is promising jobs and innovation, but some people are raising red flags. We're going to talk about that coming up, and we'll see how local meteorologists are helping Major League Baseball pull off next week's All-Star game at Truist Park. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and we look at the why and how stories are impacting you and your community. We invite the experts in to give their take as well on today's top stories, and we try to have just a little bit of fun as well. But let's start off with this. Last week, police in East Point investigated a shooting of a 3-year-old boy, later found to be accidental. This was at a home along Hawthorne Way, a couple of blocks from the former Fort McPherson and the Tyler Perry studios. Parents told the police their toddler found an unsecure handgun. He was rushed to the hospital and pronounced dead. East Point's police chief called his death unacceptable and irresponsible.
Based on the evidence we've seen, it seems like this was an accidental shooting, and it's just discouraging and sad because a 3-year-old child lost her life because of irresponsibility.
Yeah, the case is serving as a tragic reminder of understanding the state's gun laws and the importance of parental responsibility. Joining us now is Professor Thaddeus Johnson, back with us again from Georgia State's Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology. Welcome to the show again, Professor Johnson.
Thank you for having us. As always, thank you for this important conversation.
All right, yeah, so let's kick it off with the law here in Georgia, what it says about parental responsibility when it comes to handguns. This case in East Point is a heartbreaking one. How common are these kinds of accidents here in Georgia, and could stronger laws really have prevented them?
Yeah, so, these things happen all too commonly, and sometimes we hear about it, sometimes we don't. Many times it doesn't end in death. There are scares, or could be injuries. And, and it's funny, in Georgia, the Georgia law says that, you can't give handguns to kids, right? Anyone under 18, unless they're supervised while they're hunting, target shooting, or defending themselves, right? But parents can face charges, right? If they knowingly or intentionally or recklessly let a child get a hold of a gun, ignore clear warning signs that the child or the youth may want to injure someone. The prosecutors can go after things like reckless conduct, involuntary manslaughter, child cruelty, but those rely on discretionary interpretation. There's no explicit law here, like in many other states, that says you have to have a mandatory locking device, you have to have it secured. Otherwise, if a child gets hold to it and someone gets hurt, the child gets hurt, or there's an incident, the parent can be charged with a misdemeanor, a fine, and sometimes a felony.
You're saying that's not here, right?
That's not here in Georgia, and
wow.
That's disturbing because we find these laws actually save lives. Mm-hmm. It reduces unintentional child deaths and injuries. And research has even shown with the CDC that about 50% of these unintentional shootings with children happen in homes, and 74% involve an unlocked weapon. And so we need to provide our lawmakers and prosecutors with a tool to well that's not interpretive, but actually explicit when it comes to holding parents responsible.
What is the challenges behind that? Like, why aren't we there yet, do you think?
Well, not now, Chelsea, you're gonna get me in trouble, right? But right? But in this country and in Georgia, we love our guns. I mind you, I have a family that we love the Second Amendment, right? We're not big advocates, but we understand it. But I think people think that it takes away from their gun rights. I also know that oftentimes you don't want to be cruel or appear cruel and charge a grieving family who's lost a child or a loved one has been killed or injured by a child. So I believe it's that humanitarian aspect where people just can't get over that edge. But the thing is, you can have this law. It can be a case-by-case basis. It doesn't have to be a cookie cutter or one size fits all. And again, these laws save lives.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. If you get a law with guns, maybe it has to extend to other weapons. I mean, I guess you could probably arguably say, what's stopping a child from getting a knife or some other tool as a weapon, that kind of thing. Is that one of the issues? I mean, are we just that far behind when it comes to these laws? I mean, I'm trying to figure out the officers, right? What tools do they have to enforce these gun safety and storage laws? What rights do they have, or what kind of, are their hands tied on this thing?
Yeah, well, oftentimes it's very reactive, right, when it comes to enforcing the law for this or many other things. However, we don't need a law to practice a safe culture of gun safety,
True.
right? You don't need that, right? Look, and I know the people will say, well, what good does an empty, locked weapon do when there's a home intruder, right? I get that. But you can have safe storage. You can separate the ammo, right? You can have financial incentives that the state can provide when people buy free safety devices and these types of things. But it's about driving a cultural shift because otherwise it's pretty reactive. And so, great point about whether it's a knife, whether it's a chainsaw, right? The thing that we really need to be mindful of is that we have to provide parents with the resources, locking devices, whether it's training. Mind you, to own a handgun or possess a handgun in the state of Georgia, you don't need any special training. You don't need a special certification. And hell, you don't even need to get a background check unless you are a seller, right? If it's a private transaction, you don't have to worry about that. So we have loopholes in other places. And so it's about creating a culture of safe gun culture, right? And it's more so than the law. The law is just part of it.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that. Like, what do we need to do to create that culture? So what are the other things that we need to do to get that message out, get that word out to people, to practice this, besides another killing, right, or somebody dying, to get that out?
Yeah, I think, oftentimes we need to create a culture how you'll see police officers doing things like seatbelt or child seats, right? We need to push those initiatives out there, engaging pediatricians to engage families. Again, those tax credits that some states have done, and actually the state of Georgia has often put that bill on the table right now. It's passed the House, but it's not law yet. So you can do those things as well. If you're a parent and your child is going to someone's house, ask them, is there a weapon around? It's not about the rights and wrongs of it. You want to know how safe or not safe that parent or that family is. So those are some things that we can do and not waiting until another tragedy happens so it can be a flash in the pan because our emotions are so wrapped up and we're not necessarily grasping to what's the underlying problem is.
Absolutely, Professor Johnson. Always glad to have you on. You give us such great insight, man. I just hate that it's always based on a tragedy, but we have to have you on more, man. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. God bless.
All right, take care now. We are looking at another hot day, folks, on tap for us. Temperatures are around 90 degrees, so a little bit lower than where we have been. But when you factor in humidity, of course, it's going to feel like the mid-90s out there. 50% chance for the scattered showers, thunderstorms to be around. We'll have a 40% chance by tomorrow. Notice we'll be going down as far as the threat for rain goes as we head into the weekend. And that chance, and the temperature will be going up. You're looking at 92 on Saturday, Sunday, 94. Mid-90s will come back to us as we head into next week. 95 on Monday, 95 again on Tuesday. Hey, stay with us, folks. We're going to talk a little politics with NBC's national correspondent, Alice Barr, when we return. All right, this morning, global markets are reacting to President Donald Trump's latest round of tariff threats. He sent more letters to countries urging them to make deals with the United States by August 1st. Joining us now is NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr. Alice, the latest country hit by these tariffs is Brazil. How hefty are these tariffs, and why is he launching them now?
Yeah, this is a 50% tariff on Brazil specifically. There were 8 countries that he sent these letters to yesterday announcing their new tariffs, from 20% on the Philippines up to 50% on Brazil. That's by far the heftiest of them. And President Trump acknowledged that politics were part of his reasoning here because of this ongoing trial of the former Brazilian president Jair Bolsonaro. And President Trump called the trial a witch hunt that he said should end immediately. The basis of this trial is that Jair Bolsonaro is accused of attempting to hold on to power after losing Brazil's 2022 election. He's accused of being a part of a coup to try to stay in power. And President Trump has drawn parallels in the past to his own criminal charges after losing the 2020 election. Those charges, of course, were dropped when he then won the election in November. But yeah, he's explicitly saying that that is part of the reason, along with saying that there's a trade deficit between Brazil and the U.S., though, in fact, the U.S. Trade Representative says it was actually a surplus in favor of the U.S. Last year. Brazil's current president said that the country will not accept being abused and will respond to the tariffs with reciprocity. So we could be in for another trade war there with what is the 10th biggest trading partner for the U.S. in Brazil.
Yeah, all this tariff talk and turmoil seems to have people a bit skeptical. You have a new poll that seems to reflect that?
Yeah, there's a new poll from The Economist and YouGov finding that 72% of Americans surveyed think tariffs will increase the price that they pay on a variety of products, and a smaller percentage, some 20%, say that they're already adjusting their spending habits, their buying habits in preparation for what people have been anticipating for quite some time could be a spike in prices. And August 1st is when these new tariffs for Brazil and for all the other countries that the president is sending these letters to are set to take effect August 1st now. So there was a 3-month delay in what were these super widespread, massive tariffs back in April. And a lot of consumers have kind of either put it out of their minds or maybe been holding their breath to see, what was the final result going to be? What's the impact really going to be when companies here in the U.S. have to pay these import taxes for whatever they need to bring in from other countries, whatever supplies and materials, and then how that might be passed along to consumers. And now we know we're less than a month away from seeing what that impact will wind up being.
Yeah. Finally, Alice, President Trump promised 90 trade deals in 90 days. Now it seems like the top Senate Democrat is slamming him for not delivering on that pledge. President Trump's goods from Brazil at 50%, as you stated, cite a witch hunt trial against the former country's president.
Right. So that is on the Brazil tariffs that have now been announced to go into effect August 1st. And Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate, he has been criticizing President Trump, along with, of course, a number of critics, for the way that this has gone about because of the fact that it's sort of negotiation via letter now, that whether it's Brazil, whether it's the Philippines, anybody has just been getting these letters saying this is the tariff now, unless you quickly come up with a way for us to mitigate this and make it lower. And so Chuck Schumer accused President Trump of kicking the can down the road. He says he talks a big game, but then shows little follow through or strategic understanding, is how he put it. President Trump has been asserting that setting tariffs by letter here is a more efficient means of dealing with dozens of countries, and he says it is still a deal and a more powerful way to handle this, he believes. Chesley.
All right. Alice Barr, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for your insight. All right, up next on the show, we got some upgrades coming to first responders in Fulton County. Find out what they are right after the break. All right, welcome back to the show. The city of South Fulton is moving forward and giving some of its first responders an upgrade to its facilities. Here now to explain what's behind the project is South Fulton City Manager Sharon Subadan. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right. Hey, this is a massive investment for how South Fulton protects its people. So what does this project say about the city's long-term vision for the public?
So thank you for having me this morning. We are extraordinarily excited in the city of South Fulton. This will be our first major infrastructure building project, and our emphasis has been on public safety. Part of the emphasis for me as city manager is making good on the promises that were made when the city was founded in 2017. And public safety was a primary goal of having our own city. And so what it means to residents is we are committed to the future of the city of South Fulton. We're committed to public safety. Both police and fire headquarters will have a permanent home. We are committed to training, expanding both our police force and our fire force and EMS. And so what it means is we are planting our flag in the ground in the city of South Fulton for the future.
Talk to me about some of the enhancements that's going into the buildings.
Sure. So these are brand new buildings. Mm-hmm. Police headquarters will be on the Old National Highway at 75,000 square feet. Included, it will be obviously our headquarters, where it'll be the permanent place for the police department. We'll have a real-time crime center. We have a temporary one now in a leased facility. We'll have a permanent one. We use data analytics to analyze crime and state-of-the-art technology to predict how to protect the community and determine where crime will occur. And we have cameras all over the city that we're able to monitor from the real-time crime center. In addition, we will have amenities for our police officers, workout facilities, an indoor firing range, opportunities for them to train, opportunities for them to get state-of-the-art training that now we have to send people all over the country to get.
Yeah.
Additionally, it'll allow us to host training at our facility for the region. At our fire headquarters, in addition to EMS, which is Emergency Medical Services training, which we're expanding, we intend to have our future 911 facility there, our Emergency Operations Center there, and outdoor driving course for first responders, a burn building. It's pretty extensive.
Yes, it sounds like it. And as a resident of Fulton, you're probably thinking, some of them probably thinking, this is all great. But it sounds expensive, right? We're talking about a $113 million investment here, but it won't raise property tax. Explain to people how that's possible and what should residents know about the city's financing strategy?
Sure. So thank you for asking. You know, it is an expensive project. We have been very fiscally responsible in the past several years. We've accumulated some reserves. You know, we've been criticized sometimes because of our reserves. It's like, why do you need that much money in reserve? Well, this is part of it. And so we will be exploring debt service options for this, but we will also be buying down the debt, meaning we'll make a sizable down payment of a minimum of 10%, closer to $20 million from our reserves. And then we will be pursuing competitive financing for the rest.
Nice. What's the timeline for the project?
Well, we're off to the races now. We will be working to secure our finances, finalize our contracts with our two awarded groups that were awarded by City Council on Tuesday night. And then we will be going through, we follow the same rules we apply to everybody else. So we will be going through a land disturbance permit, water resources approval. So we have a process. So to answer the question, we expect to break ground closer to the fall. And it's going to be a 2-year process. We will be looking at ribbon cutting in 2027.
All right, sounds good. All right, South Fulton City Manager, Sharon Subadan, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, stay right there, folks. We're not done yet. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. This week, the U.S. Supreme Court gave the Trump administration the green light to move forward, at least temporarily, with plans to slash the federal workforce. The justices overwhelmingly sided with Trump's administration. Only one justice was disagreeing, calling the decision dangerous and overreaching. The ruling clears the way for deep workforce reductions. Some departments are preparing to cut half their staff. The decision does not decide whether the firings are legal. Ongoing lawsuits will determine if the executive order oversteps constitutional bounds. Here to make more sense of this and what we're hearing about it is Emory law professor Jonathan Nash. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. As we said, there's plenty of unanswered questions about this ruling. Why do you think the justices went the way that they did?
Well, I think the bottom line is that there's sort of two reasons. One is the challenge that was brought was too early. The government hadn't even had a chance to develop fully its plans to reduce the workforce across different government departments. And the other thing is that the executive order directed the agencies that are going to do this to do so in accordance with existing law. So there's no claim that the executive order on its face said, just go fire people. We don't care what the law says. And I think the court looked at that and said, well, that's what we have in place. We have to at least see what the government is going to do, how it's going to implement this before we declare anything proper or improper.
In your opinion, do you think the executive branch actually has that kind of power to bypass Congress and legally put the plan like this one into place?
Well, I think the court is saying no one's bypassed Congress yet. Now, it could be an issue. There will be. There already are some other litigations that are putting a pause on some of this. And if the government does try to bypass Congress, go beyond what Congress has authorized, then I do think you'll see lower courts, and maybe the Supreme Court gets back into this, saying you can't do that.
All right, so one justice, we talk about Justice Jackson, calling this the ruling a wrecking ball to the federal workforce. Legally speaking, is there any real check on how far this could go?
Well, I think the answer is yes. And Justice Sotomayor, in her concurring opinion, she joined the court and said, government can at least go forward and say what they're going to do. But once they say what they're planning, if what they're planning, as you put it, bypasses Congress, goes beyond what the law authorizes, then the courts do have the power, and it would be proper for the courts to stop this. And my guess is if that does happen, you'd get more than just those two justices saying it's not proper.
Yeah.
So there are limits here.
Okay. How might this affect the ongoing cases in the lower courts?
Well, like I said, there are some other litigations involving unionized employees, specific departments that have already put in place blocks on firing employees. Those cases are going to, I think, continue. I think you're also going to get more cases. You're likely to get cases department by department.
Yeah.
Once these plans roll out, challenging what's happening. So I think you're likely to see that. The only other thing I'd say is this ruling is just a general statement to the lower courts. You can't just, some lower court judges are just stopping what's going on too soon. You're not waiting until we see the actual contours here. Courts decide cases, the court is saying. They don't just say, this sounds dangerous. You can't do that. You have to actually see what the precise action the government's going to take is before the court should step in and enter an injunction to stop the government in its tracks.
Yeah. If you're a federal worker out there and you're watching this, what protections do you have?
Well, if you're unionized, you still have union protections, and beyond that, you have whatever civil service protections are in place that Congress put in place. You may also have courts stepping in to assert those rights as things continue. But it definitely is a time of uncertainty because the government is allowed to go forward and sort of say what it's going to do. And that backstop of an injunction isn't there anymore, a broad injunction. So we'll have to see, workers will have to see, we'll all have to see what the government comes up with, how they're planning to do this department by department, and assess it then.
All right, Professor Nash, really appreciate you joining us. Thanks for your insight today.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right. One Georgia County is looking at a proposed plastic recycling plant, but the residents of that county is saying, wait a minute. We're going to talk about it coming up. All right, welcome back to the show. A proposed plastics recycling plant in Upson County costing close to $1 billion is dividing the community, with hundreds joining a grassroots effort to stop the project before it even gets started or gets approved. Let's bring in 11Alive's Caitlin Ross, who has been digging deep into this one. And Caitlin, let's start off by explaining what's all on the table here.
This is a company based in California that wants to bring a recycling plant, a plastics recycling plant, to Upson County. They plan to spend nearly $1 billion building this plant, and they say it would help eliminate the plastic waste crisis in this country. They intend to recycle nearly 400,000 pounds of plastic every year using a new process, and they're calling it a circularity center. So they're taking this plastic out, recycling it, and then putting it back in.
Sounds like this could be a big deal for the local economy. Why are people so against it?
People have a lot of reasons. They're really worried about environmental impacts. They're worried about how this is going to be transported. This is flammable material, and it would be coming in on the county's only railroad track that's really close to a lot of working farms. People are worried that the promises the company is making may not be followed through on. They're promising about 200 jobs with a median salary of $50,000 a year, but people who have studied it say they don't really know that that's going to happen at the end of the day.
What about the local leaders there in Upson? Are they backing this project?
So that's a really great question, Chesley, because it has been difficult to pin them down on this. We went to every single county commissioner, the IDA, which is their development agency, and none of them would do a sit-down interview with us. None of them even sent us a statement from the commissioner's side, so they're really reticent to talk about this publicly.
So what's happening right now?
So right now they are in the permitting process. Brightmark tells me that they're moving full steam ahead. They're applying for their air quality permit. They intend to start building at some point in the future, but they don't have a date for that right now. They do have the plant placement picked out. It's this huge open field right now. And the people who live there say this is their land. They love this great open space. They love that it's rural, and they're worried that this plant would change all of that.
Has the plant been approved, or they're still waiting on that as well?
So they're still waiting on it right now. It's in the permitting process, and the Georgia Economic Development says that they're not willing to offer approvals until they can see how other projects they have are playing out. So they have a plant in Indiana that's currently in bankruptcy. And so people in Georgia are really concerned that that bankruptcy would impact the ability to operate here in Georgia. Now, Brightmark told me that that is not going to impact operations in Georgia, that the parent company is financially sound, and that the bankruptcy was really a restructuring idea.
So could people be looking at that and saying, okay, well, this company may not deliver on its promises, or they haven't done this over here, so maybe is that part of the angst?
That is part of the angst. It's in bankruptcy court right now, and I mean, the filing is like this thick, so all of the people who live in the community are going through it, but they're also pulling their own paperwork. So they're pulling different environmental permits. They're trying to see whether or not the company that operates somewhere else is following those environmental standards. And that's really what it comes down to. They want to protect their land. They want to protect the place that they grew up. And they say they just have not seen the evidence that this company is going to protect their properties. At one of the commissioner meetings, the company said they were learning day by day. Like every day they were learning something new. And the people who live in Upson County said, we don't want to be a guinea pig. We don't want you to use our community to learn how to do something that could be really dangerous. Brightmark says that they intend to work with all of the local emergency officials and that they're going to make sure that their emergency plans are at or above a standard that would make sure they were compliant. But people who live in this rural community say they don't have the resources if there was an emergency. They don't have the firefighters, the ambulances, any of the infrastructure to deal with something that could go wrong on this big of a magnitude.
Yeah, it sounds like high stakes for both the company and the community as well, right?
It absolutely is high stakes, and right now it's still kind of in process. So we're following this story as it's developing, and we're going to make sure we keep following it.
All right, Caitlin Ross, really appreciate you being on top of the story. Everything that impacts our environment, we want to know.
Yes.
All right, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. All right, let's take a look at our DeKalb County camera here, looking out over the city. It looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. We have a few clouds overhead right now, but you can see at least the sun poking through, and that's going to help to heat those temperatures up today. We'll be looking at those temperatures climbing closer to the 90-degree mark for this afternoon, but it'll feel a little bit warmer than that. I know a lot of folks have concerns, not really concerns, I guess plans tonight. Beyonce's in town, folks, okay? And so if the rain's going to impact my outfit, I got to know. Well, there is some showers in the forecast, and so we will be looking at the forecast very closely tonight because we don't want to let the Beehive fans down as far as the forecast goes. And so we got some friends to help us out with that as well, to talk about the forecast as well. So when we talk about the weather impact forecast, a lot of the weather, of course, is looked at when we talk about all these marquee events that we have in town. Lots of them going on. There he is, Sidney King, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Peachtree City, joining me now. Welcome to the show again, Sid.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chesley. Happy to be here today.
Hey, man, the pressure is on. I don't know if you feel it as much as we do here, but people want to know, man, the rain tonight, is it going to ruin my Beyonce plans? Well, not mine, but our viewers' Beyonce plans.
It is an important time of the year for us. Always stuff going on in the summer. Like you mentioned, it's a hot day, humid day. Heat index values could be close to about 100 this afternoon on top of temperatures around 90. We have been in a wet pattern throughout the last couple of days, and that is going to continue today. We have what you could consider almost a conveyor belt of moisture that is spreading over the southeastern United States from the Gulf. And with that increasing moisture come increasing rain chances. So we have about a 60-70% chance of showers and thunderstorms today over the Atlanta area. So that should be in the afternoon and evening hours today.
So what Sid is saying, folks, is you need to grab a poncho and cover up that Beyonce outfit. That's what he's trying to say. So I'm trying to put it off on him. He's putting it back on me.
Yes, I would definitely say to grab a poncho. Especially considering a lot of these storms, with as humid and as wet as it is, could produce some heavy rain. We would also encourage keep an eye on things around the area. If you're traveling into Atlanta for the show, we have there's a chance that some of these storms could produce heavy rainfall. And when you're in a city like Atlanta, where it all runs off, you could have some flooding in low-lying spots and in areas where the permeability is low. So be careful. If you see water moving on the roadways, turn around, don't drown.
Absolutely right. Now, the rain chance will start to go down. Talk to me about this heat. That's not going anywhere, right?
That is correct. Rain chances will start to go down after sunset today. They'll stick around a little bit into the evening, but the heat's going to remain, and that's going to continue through the end of the week. Highs in the 90s through the weekend. So if you have plans outside, if you're even early next week, if you're at the All-Star game, be sure to dress light, stay hydrated, and take frequent breaks in the shade.
Yeah, I understand that you guys are providing some support for the All-Star game next week.
That is correct. We're sending information, point forecast information for Truist Park and the surrounding area to the Cobb County Emergency Management. And then we're working with them directly, and then they're also working with the people at the ballpark as well. So we're getting them the safety information about lightning potential, heavy rain, heat index values, all the stuff you need to know from a safety standpoint. We're getting that to the emergency managers.
Sounds good. Sid King with the National Weather Service in Peachtree City. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for your insight on our wet, hot forecast.
Thanks so much, Chesley. Thank you for having me.
All right, not a problem at all. All right, folks, Amazon Days kicked off this week, but the numbers, according to the company, just aren't there. We're going to discuss coming up right after the break. Stay with us. And we're back. Federal rate cuts could be coming, but there's a catch. CNN's Maribel Aber joins us now from the NASDAQ market site in New York. Good morning to you, Maribel. And it sounds like not all the federal officials agree on that path ahead for interest rates.
Chesley, that's what it looks like. There's a growing divide at the Fed over how aggressively it should move to cut interest rates. That's according to the minutes of the Fed's June meeting. So it shows policymakers are, for the most part, agreed that a rate cut would be appropriate this year. But there was a wide range of opinions on when to cut and how aggressively to lower the Fed's key interest rate. President Trump has attacked Fed Chair Jerome Powell on social media for not lowering rates, but Powell has said he won't bow to political pressure in determining a monetary policy. And the minutes of the meeting show the Fed is still in this wait-and-see mode as it tries to gauge the impact of tariffs on the economy. Chesley, the Fed's next meeting is July 29th and 30th, so we'll watch for that.
All right, we'll be watching for it. Amazon's Big Shopping Day was on. It kicked off yesterday, but didn't go as big this time around.
Amazon saw a big drop in sales on the first day of its Prime Day event, Chesley. That's according to Momentum Commerce, which manages Amazon sales for a variety of retailers. It says day one sales plunged 41% when compared to the start of Prime Day last year. Amazon expanded the sales event to 4 days this year, so that may have actually reduced the urgency for shoppers to buy in that early going. It says consumers are browsing and loading up those shopping carts, but early on, they're sort of postponing buying in case better deals emerge. Amazon told Forbes that Momentum's numbers were highly inaccurate and made without access to all the data. Chesley, everyone I talk to has only purchased what they need. So we're talking Pyrex, batteries. I bought vitamins, so not exactly some big ticket items.
Right. I didn't buy any big ticket items either. I have them in my cart, but I'm like, so I understand.
See?
Yeah, I understand.
Tracking.
Going. Exactly. We all need a good breakfast, right? And it looks like one cereal giant stock is starting to soar now, huh?
It's a done deal. Chesley, Italian candy maker Ferrero is buying cereal maker WK Kellogg. It's a deal valued at $3.1 billion. Ferrero is the company behind Butterfinger candy bars, Nutella hazelnut spread, and other products. Kellogg makes everything, of course, from Frosted Flakes and Cheerios to Fruit Loops and other breakfast cereals. For Ferrero, the deal moves it deeper into the U.S. market. It certainly announced a number of new products to appeal to American consumers. Those include peanut Nutella and Dr. Pepper Tic Tacs. The news this morning saw shares of Kellogg soaring. Right now, the stock is up, Chesley, up 30%.
Wow. That's a lot. That is a lot. Finally, the CEO of toy company Hasbro is saying that tariffs may hurt more than the prices.
So far, those tariffs actually haven't hit prices like many have expected, but Chesley, tariffs could drive up toy prices beginning in late summer and into the fall. That's according to the CEO of Hasbro, which makes toys and games like Play-Doh and Candyland. The company's main international suppliers are China and Vietnam, and both of those countries have been hit with significant tariffs by President Trump. At the moment, Hasbro has not raised prices, but based on production timelines, increases could be coming by the fall. About half of Hasbro's products are made in the U.S., and over the past few years, the company has shifted production to reduce its reliance on China. Now, it's increased its output, though, in Vietnam, Turkey, and India. You know, Chesley, parent alert here. We got 168 days until Christmas because I do count all the time. So you got to plan that cushion.
You do. You really do. You really do. How early do you start your shopping for Christmas?
It's almost done. No, I'm just kidding. By this time, we kind of get it around. I got to get the Christmas card going. And, you know, this year, I added you and a couple others. So we might have to go to, like, instead of 500 cookies, we might be going to, like, 800.
That's why I love you, Maribel. That's why I love you. You and I are the only ones, at least here amongst our peers, that start shopping early. They wait till, like, November and December.
Because you have to be prepared.
Yeah, they don't get it. They don't get it. See, you get me. You get me. I understand. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate you. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
You got it.
All right, folks. Coming up on the show, we're going to check in with Georgia Tech. Their latest research going to go outer space, see what they're doing up there. Yeah. Stay with us. Big time news coming up. Welcome back. New research from Georgia Tech. We'll look at how a harsh environment of outer space is by sending experimental solar material up to the International Space Station. Here now with more on the project is Judd Reedy. He is the executive director of Georgia Tech's Space Research Institute. Judd, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me on again, Chesley. It's good to be back.
Yeah, you know, space is a brutal place for any kind of material. What makes these solar cells strong enough to survive up there?
Yeah, it's a variety of different types of solar cells, many of which have never been to outer space, let alone used here terrestrially. The most exciting one for me is one that's called perovskite, which is a new type of photoabsorber that gets degraded here on Earth by moisture attack from humidity as well as the oxygen attack. So a good bit of the research is encapsulating that. Mm-hmm. But in space, we don't really have to worry too much about moisture or oxygen attack. And so we think it'll perform pretty well.
Yeah. I understand you're testing about 18 different samples. How did you decide which ones make the cut?
Yeah, we probably made 20 to 30 total, tested them and got the best of the best. I got some of the ones that didn't quite make it right here beside me, so you can see examples of what would be going up there.
What will they have to withstand? Now, you mentioned that, you don't have to worry about a lot of moisture, don't have to worry about other things, but what made them stand out?
The perovskite is, we've known about perovskite since the 1800s, but didn't know it was a good solar cell until a couple decades ago. Mm-hmm. And the slope at which improvements have been going on is much, much faster than, say, a silicon cell, which are also some of the cells that we've got going to the space station. And so this shows so much promise for the future. Silicon is a very mature technology. And we've got silicon cells that we made at Georgia Tech also going. They're essentially our controls that we're comparing everything to. It's exciting. We've got 4 different research groups at Georgia Tech, as well as commercially provided solar cells that we're lofting up to the space station.
Yeah. What kind of results are you guys looking for, and how long will the cells stay up there?
They'll be up for about 6 months of external exposure, probably going up in October of this year. And the current voltage comparisons, it's called an IV curve, is what will be pulling the electrical data. We'll also have cameras that will look at them, and then we'll get the cells back themselves to study as well.
You mentioned how here in our atmosphere, how those cells will break down. Explain to us how they break down in outer space.
Outer space is harsh. So down here, we've got O2, oxygen that we're breathing. The ozone, which is higher in the atmosphere, is O3. In outer space, it's atomic oxygen, so that's O1. And that O doesn't like to be just O1. It very much wants to bind with something else. And often that's your spacecraft or your solar cells or your electronics or all sorts of things. So that degrades it. You also have to worry about micrometeorites, just tiniest flecks of dust traveling at incredibly fast speeds and parts energy that can destroy all sorts of penetrate through metal very easily.
Talk about how your research is going to help us out in the future here.
Well, the research that we do in space improves the solar cells here. For instance, perovskite, I mentioned that it degrades from moisture and oxygen attack. In space, we don't have to worry about that. Maybe we discover new degradation mechanisms in space that we don't know about yet here on the Earth because they're masked by the current degradation mechanisms. So it gives us a way to speed up the implementation of these technologies on Earth.
Mm-hmm. All right. Could we be talking about longer lasting satellites? Could we talk about solar farms maybe on the moon? Is that all a part of this as well?
Certainly longer lasting, cheaper, lighter weight, many benefits of going to space. Many of these thin film solar cells possess those qualities. And I certainly hope we have solar farms on the moon. The moon is challenging though, because it's dark for 2 weeks while it's bright for 2 weeks. So you got to have batteries when you're in the lunar night, which is 2 weeks of Earth nights.
Does research for you like this ever get old to you?
No, I wanted to be an astronaut when I grew up. So this is getting pretty close. If I can touch something that actually goes to outer space and then really touch it after it's come back from outer space, that's fun too.
Yeah. What else, is there anything else you could tell us that you guys are working on?
Oh yeah, the Space Research Institute at any moment has about a dozen different missions, either already in space, about to go to space, in the construction phase, planning phases. So yeah, I could fill up a next hour of your show if your producer will let me. No,
he's not going to let you do that, but we're going to have you back, of course, and we'll talk about those things. We're always interested in what's going on up there in outer space, and especially when we talk about what's up there, how long it's up there. Folks are really interested in that. So we'll have you back, and we'll have you talk about that.
Thank you, Chesley. Always good to be here.
Always good to see you, my friend. Take care.
Take care.
All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to have another look at that forecast. We know Beyonce fans are really concerned. We got you covered right here. And my final take right after the break. All right, we are looking at some rain, folks. Unfortunately for the Beehive, we're looking at a 50% chance for scattered showers, thunderstorms, mainly during the afternoon and early evening. Unfortunately, you may have to grab that poncho, folks. Make sure you check the forecast before you go out. If you don't have our app downloaded, go ahead and do that. It'll let you know where the rain is. You can check out our radar, and if there's anything that happens to be severe, it will alert you of that. And we are anticipating an isolated strong to severe thunderstorm. It's certainly possible. That rain threat starts to go down as we head into Friday and Saturday. We're down to a 30% chance by Saturday, down to a 20% chance by Sunday. But as that percentage goes down, the temperatures will go up. 94 degrees for the high temperature on Sunday. By Monday, mid-90s. We'll hold on to that for Tuesday. And then by Wednesday, with the chance of rain going back up, that temperature will go down again. All right, before we go, my final take. This is from the files of I don't get it. I don't get it. While here in Atlanta, we have a few major events going on this weekend, including Beyonce, the WWE, and the MLB All-Star events. I wouldn't mind attending any of those, but in Spain, the running of the bulls. Believe it or not, that's an even larger event than any of the ones I just mentioned. Pamplona, the burning of the bulls there, millions are drawn to that. Really, millions of thrill seekers and spectators from all around the world. What are they going to see? Men and women putting their lives on the line, being chased by 6 large bulls through the narrow streets of that city, 8 consecutive days in a row. Roughly running about 3.5 minutes. That's how long it takes to get through it. Of course, dozens of injuries happen each day, and at times, people lose their lives. And despite all that, the event's allure remains unblemished. So why? Why do they do it? Tradition. The running of the bulls dates back to the 16th century. Certainly not a good enough reason for me to attend. I need more than just tradition. Man, have you seen the horns on those bulls? Why do people do this? And then why do people like to watch it? I don't get it. Already this year, someone has been seriously hurt by that. It's going to continue on, folks. 8 consecutive days. Running of the bulls. I'd rather see Beyonce or even the WWE. Make it a great day. Encourage someone today, would you?